It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Well, Steve Jobs made the big announcement. New iLife, a look at Lion, the new OS X, and yes, two, not one, but two MacBook Airs. It's coming up next. MacBreak Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for MacBreak Weekly is provided by Cachefly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 217 for October 20th, 2010. Back to the Mac. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Carbonite. Backing up the files on your PC or Mac is safe and easy with Carbonite. For a free trial plus 2 free months with purchase, go to Carbonite.com. Offer code MacBreak. And by Squarespace.com, the fast and easy way to publish a high-quality website or blog. For a free trial and 10% off the lifetime of your new account, go to Squarespace.com/MacBreak and use the offer code MacBreak. And by Gazelle, the easy way to sell or recycle the used gadgets lying around your home or office. Don't just sell it, Gazelle it. For a 5% bonus payment for your used gadgets, go to Gazelle.com. Bonus code MacBreak2. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show that covers the Macintosh news. And boy, we are back to the Mac. It's so exciting joining me right now.
Baby!
We're back, baby! Alex, Lindsay, Andy, Ihnatko, both of whom with me were just watching our live coverage of Apple's event at the town hall in Cupertino. But you know who's there right now? Becky Worley. And we're going to go via FaceTime to the demo room upstairs from the town hall in Cupertino, where Becky has a first-hand look at the new MacBook Airs. So we'll start with that. Let me plug you in. Go ahead, Becky.
Hey guys, hello. We are in what I like to call the magic room. We've got all these journalists here behind me looking at the new products, and I have to say this is the first time I'm doing a live shot via FaceTime, so I think that's monumental in its own right. But big news coming in today from the Apple announcement. Let's start with FaceTime, the way that Steve Jobs did. FaceTime for the Mac is now available. I tried it out. It works. You will just use your Apple ID and make calls to people who have FaceTime-enabled mobile devices. We also heard the announcement that there is a new Mac OS, Lion. I'm sure Leo and the guys will get into that, but I want to give you a full visual demo of the new MacBook Air. This thing is teeny, teeny, tiny. I'm going to switch my camera here and show you, starting out, this is the 13-inch model. Looks like it is just obscenely thin. At its thickest, it is 0.86 inches thick. It weighs 2-point-something pounds. Really, really light. The headline on this one, 7-hour battery life. That's when it's on, and it says what Steve said was that it also has 30 days of standby time, which is pretty unbelievable. We looked at the inside of this thing. It has onboard flash. It has a ton of battery. The only thing that was really kind of interesting to me as I've been able to dig in here is looking at some of the specs. I think what I really found interesting was that these guys have only a pretty, 1.6 processor, 1.6 gigahertz processor, but the headline is the size, the weight. There's a 13-inch model, and then right next to it here, I'll put the 11-inch model so you can see how they compare side by side. And really what we're talking about here, guys, are Apple netbooks. Price start at $9.99 for this, then it bumps up to $11.99. You want to add more storage memory, then that's going to cost you a couple hundred more. I'll let the guys get into the details on that. I'm going to throw it back to you, Leo, and I'll keep shooting the pictures, and I'll take you over and show you some of the other things here as I listen in, and you guys can see what we're seeing.
Thank you, Becky. I have to unplug Becky because it doesn't work that she can hear us at the same time as we can hear her. So she's going to continue to show us pictures. We're on an iPhone 4, although I am downloading FaceTime. The FaceTime for the desktop is downloading now. Let's go through, guys, what was announced today, and we'll keep looking at pictures as we talk of this MacBook Air. In fact, as long as we got the MacBook Air on the screen, let's go backwards and start with the MacBook Air. That was the one more thing that Steve Jobs announced today, and it was heavily rumored. Andy Ihnatko, what's your thoughts on these new MacBook Airs?
That's a very big deal. I mean, last week, the week before, I was talking to a friend, and he was asking me about rumors about the MacBook Air, and I had to tell him that, well, at that point, we hadn't really seen anything really substantive, and MacBook Air was really on that bubble, wasn't it, where it could have been one of those products where they tried it, it never made a big splash, and it was prepared to fade away, which is why when it started becoming hard to get your hands on one, I was wondering, does this mean they're coming out with a new model, or does it mean that they're coming out, or they're just going to be discontinuing it? But it really does show that Apple is one big company. They're not a company consisting of 8 or 9 or 10 different divisions that don't talk to each other. So this really is the idea of let's build the first MacBook that has been informed by everything that we learned by building the iPad. The biggest feature, though, above everything, no matter what you're going to talk about, is going to be the price tag, $999. That instantly makes the MacBook Air credible, which is something that the previous edition really wasn't. I mean, if you're going to choose between spending $1,600 for an absolutely kick-ass MacBook Air, MacBook Pro, or the same amount of money for a nice, thinner, lighter version of the same thing, but with a much weaker processor, only one USB port, every single disadvantage you can possibly think of, it was a sucker bet. But for $999, there are a lot of people who want an iPad that runs Mac software, and I think that the MacBook Air is going to be the machine that they buy.
If you look at the range of prices, you're right, starts at $999, goes up to $1599. There are two models. There's an 11-inch and there's a 13-inch. The 11-inch, 1.4 gigahertz Core 2 processor, 2 gigs of memory, 64 gig flash storage, NVIDIA GeForce 320M graphics, and a 64 gig flash drive, as I mentioned, $999. These are all available now. The for 128 gigs, same specs, $1199 for a bigger flash drive. If you move to the 13-inch, you can go to a 1.86 gigahertz Core 2 processor. Flash storage choices in the 13-inch are 128 gigs and 256 gigs, but the prices are considerably more, $1299 and $1599. Still, these are lower, aren't they, Andy, than the last MacBook Air?
I was very surprised that they hit the $999 price point.
It's
if I had made a bet, well, it's just that it's a direct competitor now to the cheapest MacBook nothing. So they are really giving consumers a choice between you can have small, thin, light, you will sacrifice some hard disk space, you will also not get an optical drive, or for the exact same amount of money, we will give you a more conventional notebook. I would have thought that they would have made the lowest price of the MacBook Air, maybe $1,100, $1,200, just to give it a little bit of space and pricing. But that is a very interesting move. It really makes me even more interested to see what the next MacBook after this is going to be.
Yeah. The screen resolutions are comparable to the 13-inch on the 11-inch, so you really could get almost an identical machine to the white MacBook in terms of processor power. It's a little lower processor power. It's a 1.4 gigahertz instead of 2.4 gigahertz. Mm-hmm. Storage is a little bit lower, but you do get the same 320M graphics and the same screen resolution. So at the same price, you have to say this might even, you think, would it phase out the MacBook nothing, as you call it?
I don't think it would phase that out because there are too many people who are still kind of addicted to the idea of having massive number of ports. Well, not just massive storage, massive ports, and also having that right. drive slot. One of my worthy and deserving aunts. One of the reasons why she really wanted to get the real MacBook was that it would allow her to play DVDs when she goes off on her little trips. So I don't think that my aunt would be more interested in a MacBook Air that would force her to learn about MP4 rather than these lovely discs that she plays at home.
You can upgrade the 11-inch for a little more money to 1.6 gigahertz, but it's still a fairly slow processor. Is that too slow?
I'm sure it's going to be fast enough. The big deal is that it has the same accelerated NVIDIA graphics chip as the regular MacBook. So in terms of the things that people will really notice speed for, playback of video and the video that's embedded into web pages, I don't think they'll notice any sort of a difference. And the people who are more interested in high-performance stuff like aperture editing, iMovie editing, they're probably going to be thrown by the amount of storage anyway. So I don't think that's going to be a real factor for them.
Looks like Becky's trying to go over and talk to Steve Jobs. Let's listen in and see what's going on as Becky and approaches Steve Jobs here.
We like it, Steve. Steve's making the rounds, talking to the people.
This is, by the way, a first for us, a FaceTime call to the Apple campus.
I do have FaceTime working on the desktop, by the way.
You know, I do think that there's a question of whether the MacBook makes sense.
Hold on.
Apple's
She's talking to Steve.
Say that again?
They're wonderful machines. I've been using one and they're great.
You like it a lot?
A lot.
Fits in the bag and you take it with you everywhere?
You don't even need a bag. They're 2.3, 2.9 pounds.
Can I ask you one other question? Does the fact that we now have FaceTime just on the Mac mean we won't see APIs for other video conferencing?
We didn't say any such thing.
Okay, just checking.
There you go. I think that's our first. That's a first on Twit Live, an actual conversation with Steve Jobs. Well done, Becky Worley. That's pretty exciting. Thank you, Becky, for getting that. That's amazing. Well done. Oh, I hope I didn't lose her here. The iPhone has failed me just in the nick of time. Let's see if we can get her back. There she is. There she is.
Call from.
Somebody else is calling. I hate you, whoever you are, you lose. So there you go. You still heard Steve Jobs deny that the fact that FaceTime desktop is now available on the desktop. There's Becky. Sorry about that, Becky. Let me start the FaceTime up again, and we can talk to you. Nice scoop getting Steve Jobs, and I'm glad you asked him about FaceTime, open FaceTime.
Yeah, that was the one thing that really struck me was the FaceTime issue. And maybe it's just my own personal bugaboo because I really want to FaceTime with my kids when I'm on the road and they just have a computer at home. But I thought that we'd heard that those APIs would open up later. I mean, that was what I kind of thought might come down after we heard about it just being for Mac. But there was no announcement, and as Steve said, Nez said no such thing. And I don't know if we'll ever see those or if this is just a great branding opportunity for them to keep FaceTime to Mac exclusive and proprietary. That certainly is an incentive for iPhone users to think about their next computer purchase being a Mac. But he seems really happy with the MacBook Airs, and I would say we have definitely scooped something by doing the first interview via FaceTime.
First
Certainly
FaceTime
with
interview.
Jobs.
That's awesome. Well done, Becky Worley. We'll see you back here in just a little bit. People keep calling me. Thank you, Becky Worley. Really appreciate it. Well done. Becky's going to come back, and we'll cover this on TNT. And... Of course, as soon as you show a phone, people feel like they should just call it because, hey, that's what you do with phones. We haven't heard from you, Alex, Lindsay. What do you think about what we've seen so far?
Well, I think that the MacBook, I do think that is in danger. I think that if you want more storage, if you want more connections, I think Apple's going to want you to get a MacBook Pro, even the small 13-inch. Apple has been very, very good at doing a gradation. One set of products all the way through, and I think what you're seeing right now is an overlap between two different pieces, and I'd be surprised if we see that continue, through the end of 2011.
So the MacBook Air, the biggest one more thing, and kind of a surprise. I don't think anybody predicted there'd be two models, an 11-inch and a 13-inch model. The 11-inch is very small and light and available now. I've actually sent Jammer B. He's calling around to see if they're in the stores. He says there aren't any in the stores nearby. I was going to send him running out the door. I guess the big choice is storage. That's the question: is can you live with 64 gigabytes of storage?
Alex, 128 or 256.
Yeah, but I mean if you want the $999, you're going 64. Right.
Well, and I think I keep on looking at it because while it's not necessarily a great solution for me, I'm really a MacBook Pro user, and I need to be. I can definitely see the way my wife uses her laptop. The small $999 would be perfect. I mean, she generates about 3 megabytes of content a year.
Yeah. So easy for somebody who just does docs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, also, I've been hearing from a lot of people who were interested in the MacBook Air rumors because that is exactly what I've been hearing from people, that I would go for an iPad immediately because I want something that lightweight and that durable, but I need something that will run a certain class of software that's not available on the iPad yet. So I know at least one person who I'm sure already has his order placed in because this person is a screenwriter and you can't really do screenwriting on the iPad.
Interesting. You can upgrade to 4 gigs on even the least expensive one.
Yeah, but that's certainly enough for the sort. I really think that Apple is going to spend the next couple of weeks making sure that they're very clear on the sort of person who is correct for the MacBook Air, as opposed to the people who shouldn't be distracted from their original intent of buying a more traditional notebook.
Right. All right. Well, let's now that we've started at the end, let's go back to the beginning. The event started this morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time with Steve Jobs walking onto the stage. And almost immediately introducing Phil Schiller, who talked about, well, a lot of numbers. These are numbers we heard on Monday with the Apple call, the Apple conference call with analysts. A very successful quarter for Apple, yes?
Yeah, absolutely. They did a good job of making the point that of how much business that they do with the Mac. What they're trying to also make the point that if you look at them as a company that makes computers in all kinds of shapes and sizes, that they are really one of the titans of the whole computer market, and that as such their market share is definitely increasing. But that really is kind of the way that they open all these things. They always throw the numbers at us while we know that we're not going to leave the room.
Right.
Well, I think that Apple wanted to make sure to test the new cash printing presses. And it turned out they are.
They're working. 14.1 million iPhones sold in this quarter, the most they've ever sold in any quarter. The iPhone 4 unqualified success, better than this quarter last year, better than the 3GS, better than anything. I mean, really, better, by the way, most importantly, than BlackBerry's RIM. It's the first time Apple's beat RIM in quarterly sales.
Yeah, I mean, it really does make the CEO of RIM wish that he might have held off for a couple of days before saying, "Oh, he's just people don't like the Apple anyway. There's not enough control over the Apple universe." But yeah, it was a really dense information dump. I'm looking at my own live blog right now just to see the notes that I took at that point. But they really wanted to make the point that numbers. It's not about wiffle dust and magical fairies with Apple products. That the numbers show that they are selling a hell of a lot of things to a hell of a lot of people.
They, by the way, I forgot to mention the first thing Steve said is please turn off your phones.
Yeah.
He did not say turn off your MiFi devices, turn off your Wi-Fi devices, and I guess he didn't need to this time. They weren't demonstrating anything like that. And the FaceTime demo on both the desktop and the phone worked just fine.
Yeah, I think Town Hall is actually a big Faraday cage. I think that's the reason why they chose that wallpaper. It has copper mesh built back in every single square inch.
Then on to, not a surprise at all, iLife 2011, iLife 11. Big updates, primarily, well, I guess all 3 applications got updated, iMovie, iPhoto, and GarageBand. Let's start with iPhoto. Any thoughts about the updates there? It looked like full screen was the big story there.
That's right. That's the big deal. They are definitely trying to make sure that there's going to be some intersection between iOS and macOS. People who are wondering if iOS will ever come to the desktop, I think we now seen what Apple has planned, that they're simply going to take the parts of iOS that seem to translate well to the desktop and move it in. So we'll see more about that later when we talk about later things. But so now there is a very iPad-like full screen photo view that you can switch in and out of. It looks like a really good way of navigating between lots of different albums, lots of different places. Also, the map. They've spent a lot of time demonstrating their new map feature. I think possibly because it makes such a great demo. When you have a background that is always an interactive map that you can sort of, it's kind of like tracing Jason Bourne if you're the CIA. You'll see the photo sort of race along maps with little pinpoints over this really nicely rotating globe and interactive Google Street View sort of thing. So they spent a lot of time on that because it is really a cool demo.
I have downloaded the FaceTime app, and it does require, it looks like Snow Leopard to run. So it's complaining to me that I don't have a security update that I can't get. So I suspect that that's because I'm running Leopard, not Snow Leopard. The new Airs will not be in Apple stores, according to the Apple stores. We've called until later this week, but they do say call first thing tomorrow morning. I was able to order online, and they say 1 to 3 business days.
I will have mine tomorrow morning.
How do you get that so fast?
I'm me. No, I got the phone call yesterday where which off if I'm getting something like day and date, there's usually that call saying we cannot confirm the news that's going to be released on Wednesday. However, just out of curiosity, will you be home to sign for a package on Thursday morning? Because we have some printed press materials that we want to make sure we mail. Just a FedEx pack,
And we want you to be home personally to sign for those printed materials.
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's see, what else? Now, you were very interested, I think, Alex, Lindsay, in the new features in iMovie.
Well, I think that I don't know if I'm totally interested in them. I mean, I don't know how much I would use a lot of the new features, but I can definitely see how Apple would be, a user of iMovie might want to put together this little road trip, and they put together a little music video or a trailer as well.
The trailer was kind of an interesting feature. I don't know. I mean, it did take him a fairly long time. Some of the bloggers were grousing at how long it was taking for him to put together that trailer.
You got to put that in perspective of putting those graphics together. I do this for a living, and putting those graphics together at that quality would take a lot longer than what he did. So, being able to do something on a flight home, I always think of it, if you had a 2.5-hour flight home and you had a bunch of video, could you throw those SD cards in, digitize, pull it all into iMovie and make a little music video or a little trailer to send to your family and friends? And I think you could definitely do that. I mean, he did it in minutes, and that would have taken, that's a weekend of work in Final Cut and Motion.
Yeah.
You'd have a lot more control and a lot more specialization. I still think that what Apple needs to do is start opening some of this stuff up, let third-party developers really build lots of those templates, and let people get a much more individualized, experience.
There still aren't tools to do that?
Not really. No, Apple. I think part of it is they just like to. It's more of they just like to develop the way they like to develop. They want to be. They don't want to have to think about third-party developers and compatibility and everything else. They just want to keep on moving down the path, and they don't want to deal with it. And I think that's partially why they do that.
Interesting.
But Alex, the question that I wanted to ask is, does that trailer wizard seem like a flexible sort of feature? It seems like a really cool way to make fun movie trailer versions of your videos, all the way down to that square of high definition micro blob text with every single person, every single name associated with the video included in that. But it seemed like I was surprised that the demo went for so long, because it seemed like just a fun little thing they threw in just to make things more interesting. But they seem to be giving it so much time that they thought that this will we've listened to users, and this will revolutionize the way we share videos in the 21st century.
Being able to edit more effectively in audio, I think, was more revolutionary for the average user who needs to do stuff in iMovie. That has been a little bit difficult, and that's definitely improved. I think that this is a cool feature. I mean, I think there's a lot of people that will play with it that use iMovie. If you think that this isn't enough, then you probably should be using Final Cut Express.
Do you think that this is approaching Final Cut Express? We talked on our live coverage that it looked like there was no constraint on the developers for the iLife package to avoid professional features.
Well, I think that they're using whatever technology, whatever features, whatever Apple has in its big trust, its brain trust of all the stuff they bought, from Shake to Chalice to Final Cut and all these other things. In Logic. So they have full access to that, but I do think that they limit what they do to what can they do in real time. Right. I mean, in Final Cut, there's a lot of things that you'll do and then hit render and wait. So what can you do in real time, and what is going to be easy for the user? How do we not add a ton of buttons and dials? And I think that those are things that are way heavy on the team as they start to put that stuff together, and what limits what they put into it. And it's a very slow process, but I do see iMovie becoming much more full featured over time, but very focused on the consumer and not on the professional.
We'll continue with our coverage of Apple's big announcement today, the new iLife package. We're going to talk a little bit about the new GarageBand features. We will talk about FaceTime and do more on the MacBook Air in just a bit. Andy Ihnatko is here, Alex Lindsay as well. You're watching MacBreak Weekly, brought to you today by Carbonite.com. Yes, Carbonite is a Mac as well as a Windows program. It is a great way to back up. In fact, if you are not yet backing up automatically to the cloud, you better start thinking about it, because, it's great to back up to a CD or a DVD or a thumb drive or an external drive. I hope you're at least doing that much. But remember, if your media is sitting right next to the computer and somebody comes and steals a computer, or a fire hits your house, or a tornado or an earthquake, you could lose everything at the same time as you lose the originals. That's why I'm a big fan of a Carbonite. Carbonite is back up into the cloud, where you can access your files anywhere. You don't even need to have the same computer. You just log onto your Carbonite account from any computer, or use the free iPhone app. There's a free BlackBerry app, too, lets you access your data. It's always there. It's completely safe because your files are encrypted twice. They use SSL, so you can even use an open access. You know, Carbonite's always backing up, so if you get to a Starbucks, an open access point, it'll use that internet connection if you're not using it to back up. But you don't have to worry about it because it's SSL. It's encrypted, and if you want more, you can further encrypt using AES 256, so you have absolute privacy. Unlimited backup. Everything on your internal drive, just $55 a year, 15 cents a day. It's worth it for the peace of mind, believe me. Easy to use, automatic, very easy to restore. Mac or PC, try it today free for 2 weeks. Carbonite.com. Carbonite.com. Use the offer code MacBreak. And by the way, if after you try it, you decide to buy it, and I think you will, use the offer code MacBreak, and you'll get 2 free months when you purchase it. Carbonite.com. Offer code MacBreak. It's backup done right. Carbonite. We are talking about everything that happened today, and there was quite a bit. Were you surprised, either of you, by what Apple announced? It seemed like the rumors were pretty strong that this is exactly what they were going to do. Is there anything that you were surprised to hear about, or anything you wanted to hear about you didn't hear about, Alex?
I think that the fact that they were showing so much of an iOS so early. I mean, I kind of have expected iOS to be the next, OS 10. I didn't expect to see it this year. So I think that was the, how far they're going. And
well, you won't see it. You won't see it till summer of next year.
Yeah. Just the fact that
they showed it. You mean?
Yeah. Apple doesn't usually show anything that far in advance, or very little that far in advance. The fact that they did that, I thought was, that was surprising.
Any surprises to you, Alex? I mean, Andy?
I wasn't quite so surprised, only because they're now in the part of their development where so much of the things they're going to do with the OS requires a long head start for developers, where just seeding it to developers 3 months before release will no longer do. They really need to get people on board quickly. So that really wasn't a big surprise to me. The bigger surprise was that they didn't show off anything in the operating system that wasn't directly related to that integration between, or that the sort of cross-pollination between iOS and the Mac OS. As a matter of fact, there's a new terminology that I'm scrolling back to find. Where do they say? Now they're referring to it as the virtuous circle, that the Mac OS created iOS, and now the iOS inspires new features for Mac OS again. So really, that was the entire message, that they're really trying to make sure that the Mac OS is not forgotten, that hopefully some of the sloppy seconds, or some of the halo effect from iOS will start to really get people excited about the Mac again. And about time, too, because it's been a couple years since they've done anything to really grab people's attention.
Let's continue on with our look at iLife. So, incremental improvements in iPhoto, somewhat more significant improvements, particularly to audio editing in iMovie. But GarageBand seemed like it got a lot more new stuff. And by the way, I don't know, is iWeb dead, or are they just not updating it? Apparently, it is included.
Yeah, it was one of the icons that was there. iDVD was also one of the icons that was there.
Yeah, and I thought that was gone.
And that's both of those were definitely marked for death by the rumor mill. So I don't know. This stay of execution. Go ahead.
I think that they're done with them. I don't think we're going to see any development on them. I think that they're focusing on other things. If they didn't update them on this round, I don't think that they're going to. I think that those apps are probably going to stay the way that they are.
The $49 for the upgrade, and it is an upgrade because there's nobody with a Mac that doesn't doesn't have iLife at this point, and $79 for the family pack, which I think in the past has been 5 licenses. I don't know. I'll have to check on that. So just running down the new features that we mentioned earlier in the iPhoto: full screen views for faces, places, events, and albums. Email photos using Apple themes. Share photos with Facebook. And by the way, see the comments from Facebook back in iPhoto. Very interesting integration into Facebook there. Pro quality books, cards, letterpress photo cards, new slideshow themes. iMovie, as we mentioned, movie trailers, audio editing controls, visual effects, one-click visual effects like slow motion, dream haze. I like the one-click instant replay. It's not something you couldn't do without it, but it's in there.
I really love I really love the audio editing because my biggest complaint about the lack of frame, be able to edit down to the very frame that you need, is that sometimes you just want to cut to something right before someone says something or right before something happens. And the fact that you just have the audio stream just overlaid upon that clip, so you can say, okay, that peak right there is where the bat hits the ball. So I'm going to make that cut start right before that clip right there. And it seems as though it's an easy way to get things synchronized like that, just really, really carefully.
By the way, customers, and this includes me, who purchased a new Mac computer or refurbished Apple, certified refurbished from the Apple online store between October 1st and October 19th, can upgrade to iLife 11 for $6.99. So thank you, Apple. You saved me some money. People Finder in iMovie. That's kind of interesting. They've had it in iPhoto for a while, face recognition. Now you've got it with video. And here's an interesting addition. You can now upload, you could always upload to YouTube. I don't remember if you can upload to Facebook in the past, but you can now do Facebook, YouTube, Vimeo, that's new, and CNN iReport, and then it says and more. I'm not sure what the and more is.
But isn't that hugely interesting, though? The way that they articulated face recognition wasn't show me all clips that have my Aunt Mimsy in it. It was, I need a 2-shot. Show me all these clips that have 2 shots in them. And it will simply show you, here's a 2-shot, here's a 3-shot, here's a master, here's a single. The biggest demonstration of it was when they were showing off that movie trailer idea where there's a template for, in a world where love is against the law. And it starts off with a dramatic single of someone moving across. It actually it has a template where it knows it wants to start off with a wide shot. It wants to move to groups, wants to move to like the dramatic hero, and it has that ability to at least segregate your clips between what kind of people are in there and what kind of shots there are. For me, that would be a huge. That would really make me want to make a lot more movies. For me, it's such I'm such a terrible in-camera editor. I'm shooting lots and lots of different stuff, so I wind up with an hour's worth of footage, of which I want to find 3. The ability to simply say, well, I've been on this wide shot for a while. I want to find a close-up of somebody talking, and just simply say, iMovie, show me a close-up of talking, and then it will just simply narrow it down to what I want.
You think it's interesting that CNN iReport is one of the upload?
No, I actually think that's actually really interesting, because I think that CNN, of course, is spending more and more energy. A lot of news gathering organizations are focusing more on that, and I think that it's a pretty profound thing when you think about how many people can get it, and to be able to edit really quickly on your Mac and boom, show a thunderstorm or something, or a car on fire or a house on fire or whatever they're going to show on the news, and be able to do that. I think a lot of people stop.
Becky Worley's interview with Steve Jobs on FaceTime.
Right. Well, and the thing is the fact that someone it stops people when it's happening really quickly from uploading the news, because someone else is going to beat them to it. You're going to see a lot of iPhone or reports coming from these things because it's so easy to do. And I think that's it's really, really interesting when we look at the future of the press.
Let's move on to GarageBand. There's some new features in GarageBand. Tighten the timing of your recordings with FlexTime. And then similar, match the rhythm of all tracks with a single track using groove matching. These are kind of the automation features that I think major producers in the record industry have been using for years to correct poor play. Now you can do it too.
One of the things that I'm really interested in doing is trying to mix disparate types of music together, because you have a lot of things that work at different times or work at different, in different structures, and seeing how, like if you wanted to do a drum and bass version of some, more, historical music or whatever, you could theoretically tie all that stuff back together, depending on how robust the tool is.
Recreate the sound of legendary guitar rigs and pedals using new guitar amps and effects. That kind of builds a little bit of propeller reason into it. And this is, I think, the most interesting thing. The lessons that they announced in iLife, the last version of GarageBand, didn't seem to ever really take off. The celebrity guitar and piano lessons. They had some. They were great. There was a store, but I never saw a lot more influx into the store. Well, now they have lessons, but not with celebrities, but actually real lessons on how to play the guitar or the piano, and something called How Did I Play, which measures your performance.
Yeah, I'm still kind of curious as to how well that's going to work out, because it's a great demo. It shows you how it will give you while you're playing along on a USB keyboard, for instance, in the keyboard lessons, it will give you the virtual keyboard up on the screen. It will show you where your fingers should be. It will give you it'll let you play along with a chamber quartet minus the keyboard part, and will show you exactly where you flubbed, what you're doing better, what your progress is, and that's nice. But it still doesn't really show. It doesn't teach you how to understand the music. It simply helps you train to put your fingers in the right places at the right times. And that's why all these instructional things have always sort of failed, just for me personally, because I gave up on piano lessons after 3 or 4 years, because my friends, for some reason, they were able to learn to read music. But for me, the sheet music was always just, now I put this finger here, 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 and then this one here, and then press it down. Meanwhile, move this hand over there. I wish that the lessons were a little bit more abstract by nature of, well, here's how you should understand how this piece is put together. Here's what your right hand should be doing, and here's how you should be training your mind on how your fingers should be moving across the keyboard. So, I guess version of Guitar Hero.
I guess also it remains to be seen how much support Apple's going to throw into this. I mean, they announced these lessons in the last version and didn't really support them.
Yeah, I am very excited about the concept of this interactive lesson where you can actually kind of play along and see how you're doing and seeing how you're following along. I think that combined with more theory somewhere else. I mean, this is training your fingers. I mean, I always think of everything in thirds. You train people's fingers for a third of the time, you train their mind a third of the time, and then you let them play a third of the time. Yeah. And that's really, this is one component of 3 components that are important.
All right, we're going to move to FaceTime. You can download it right now. It's available. It's the desktop version of FaceTime, and I've downloaded it, and it looks like it requires Snow Leopard. I'm not able to run it on my Leopard-only machine.
I've got mine up and going. It requires some verification. So it took me everyone's obviously downloading and trying to use it at the same time. But as soon as I was able to verify back onto the site and verify my email address, you have a preview window here on the left side of the window. On the right side, you have a scrolling list of every single person in your contact database, including ones that don't even have an email address associated with it. The cool thing is that you can associate your Mac FaceTime with an email address that's not necessarily your Apple ID email address. So you can have it. For me, I use my .Mac address just for my Apple ID, and that's it. And I have it hooked up to my actual main email, so hopefully it'll be one less thing to track.
So somebody can call you via your email address or your .me account?
It uses the email address that you designate when you configure FaceTime for the first time on the Mac is the one that will be used to find you. I have not seen. I keep scrolling through this list because I'm expecting that as friends of mine complete their downloads of FaceTime and get registered.
Yeah.
What I'm guessing is that the scrolling list, I will see like an icon next to these names saying, "Oh, this person is on FaceTime and has the application launched." But didn't you think that it's sort of interesting though that everyone was expecting, and of course it's integrated right into iChat. Well, no, it's a separate application that does nothing but FaceTime. So that's kind of an interesting development, isn't it?
And if you just tuned in, you saw Becky Worley asked kind of the $64,000 question. When FaceTime was introduced on the iPhone 4, Jobs pointed out that it used a stack of open source technologies for SIP and connection and so forth, and implied that because it's open source, we will allow others to integrate with FaceTime. And wouldn't it be nice? Skype said, well, we'd love to be able to make Skype calls to a FaceTime receiver and vice versa. Yeah. No announcement of that, no indication of that, although Becky Worley, as you saw earlier in the show, did nab Steve Jobs at the demo and ask him, and he said, we didn't say that. He didn't say we are going to do it. He said we just didn't say we wouldn't.
Yeah.
What he said was, we don't want to deal with the press fallout of talking about this right now. This isn't what we're focused on. That's what he said.
Did he say that exactly? Or I think he just said we didn't.
Yeah, that's...
Is that what he said?
That was implied.
That was your interpretation of what he said.
That was my interpretation of what he said was, we don't want to deal with that right now.
It was a non-denial denial. Or it was actually what's the opposite of a denial?
I believe the technical journalistic term is, I can't hear you, I can't hear you, la 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 la.
It was a non-assertion assertion.
Yeah. Although it does, he was very clear to use the, what did he say, 19 million devices that support FaceTime. So, okay, when he introduced FaceTime over the summer, we predicted there will be more than 10 million FaceTime devices available by the end of the the year. Okay, good.
Hey, 14 million were sold in the last 3 months. 14 million iPhone 4s. So, absolutely, people can use FaceTime. But I think adding, it's only on Wi-Fi with iPhone 4s and iPod Touches, new iPod Touches. So I think adding a desktop component is important to making, you got to be able to use it, or it's not going to, people aren't going to adopt it. Yeah, and that sort of points to the reason why I think FaceTime is a separate app, so they can release it like iTunes, and they can do a Windows version of that app. Not an open API that anybody can support, but they can support Windows users by creating their own Windows version of that app under the Apple logo. Very, very good point. Did they release? Did they announce a Windows version?
Nope, not a peep.
Because you're absolutely right. That's the argument for not building it into iChat. There's no iChat for Windows.
Yeah.
Very, very good point. Anything else to say about FaceTime before we move along?
I think it's going to be exciting for shows like this. I mean, when you saw what just happened at the event, finally being able to do that is going to be. I mean, it's just.
Well, and it would have been nice if I'd had the desktop version. We would have seen a nice full screen, or not full. Well, that's another question, by the way. When you use the desktop application, it's the aspect ratio of an iPhone 4, and when you rotate the iPhone 4 to a landscape mode, it does go to landscape mode. Does it have full screen, Andy?
I'm looking at it right now. It doesn't appear to have any sort of a manual rotation mode. I've been looking for a button like that. I've also been looking for like a multi-touch. Gee, if I do this on the trackpad, does that rotate the screen? When you go into full screen, when you tap the window button for full screen, all that happens is that it enlarges, right? Yeah. And so that's basically what you're looking at in a FaceTime window. So maybe when there's an active call, there'll be an option for rotating the screen manually. But when it's in standby mode like this, in terms of other features, there doesn't appear to be. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm looking through the menus right now. Under the video menu, there is actually a dimmed out use landscape option. Well, so I'm guessing, and also a dimmed out enter full screen mode. So I'm guessing those would become active.
Oh, okay.
When you have an active call.
As soon as somebody calls you, let me know.
Of course.
And we'll try.
I can put it this way: if you have the desktop version of FaceTime and you know my real email address, by all means call.
Well, I'm not going
to give it on the. Oh, you got it?
I could do it from my.
You could do that.
I have an iPhone 4. Let me try it right here.
Actually, that's going to be interesting because let's see if it goes to my iPhone or to the desktop version of FaceTime here.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder if I have to register you in some way.
Mm.
And you want me to use the address that I normally send you email via?
Exactly.
That super magic, unknown, unguessable address. How do I start a FaceTime call with a phone with an address? I just How do I do that? Do you know? On the phone. I mean,
going from memory.
Well, I'll just call you, I guess. But it probably will ring your. I don't understand. The FaceTime button?
Oh, here we go.
Somebody's calling you, so I don't have to.
Well, I get it's not you.
No, it's not me.
Hello. Hey, congratulations. You win the Chrysler Cordova. You are FaceTiming.
It's
you are
Ken
now
Shepardson. Hey, K
yes.
Shep. All right, now, so Annie, let's see can you go full screen on that? It does auto sense when Ken rotates it. It will auto sense the rotation on the phone.
Okay, I see. Yep, I see a full. Yep, I see a full screen button at the bottom here. Ken is waving. I'm going to put it into full screen mode
because that's a competitive advantage.
The frame is stuck with Ken's finger in a very inappropriate place. So I'm not going to show it to you until it does go to full screen and then hopefully unlocks. Why are you locked up?
Because.
Oh, I am. Hang on. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yep. So now we have.
It does go full screen. Hey, that's awesome. That's nice. Now, what happens, Ken, if you rotate it to portrait mode again?
This is like we're talking to Raj's parents on Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. Rotate it sideways, Ken, to portrait mode. He's not. You can't hear a thing.
Yeah, you rotate it sideways to portrait mode.
Once again,
yeah,
we are not CNN. Just so you know.
I'm sorry. You're on the desktop, aren't you?
Oh, he's on the desktop. Okay,
yes.
So he can't rotate his desktop.
He's using the desktop version.
Got it. So full screen landscape works. Rotation, if you rotate it, if you call from a phone, it'll rotate. Got it. So it does have, it's comparable to Skype. It doesn't have things like Skype Out. It doesn't have a lot of the features of Skype. It's basically FaceTime to FaceTime.
Right. And I don't see a control for choosing a video input, but there is a control for choosing a microphone input.
All right.
So obviously they're not trying. Maybe Skype is one of the companies they're thinking about buying because they didn't put that kind of features into the desktop version of FaceTime here.
You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Ihnatko's here. Ken Shepardson via FaceTime. Alex Lindsay from an undisclosed location. There's Ken. Hey, Ken.
Say hello to the nice folks, Kenny. Hello to the nice folks, Kenny. Oh, Kenny, you promised you'd behave today if I took you out of your little box.
Ken. This is a special edition of MacBreak Weekly covering Apple's Back to the Mac event. And now, the main stage, we're going to talk about the changes to OS X in Lion in just a second. And I think these might be a little bit controversial, but we'll talk about it in a moment. Before we do, I want to mention our friends at Squarespace.com. It's the site where exceptional websites begin. You get hosting, you get software, you get the best with Squarespace.com. I mean, I can go on and on. Some great features. The iPhone app, there's nothing more elegant or gorgeous than the Squarespace iPhone app that lets you post but also moderate comments and see your stats. And by the way, when it comes to stats, Squarespace gives you some great looking stats. Lots of valuable information. The templates are where most people start, 60-plus professionally designed templates, but each and every one of them is fully customizable with drag and drop with clicks of the mouse. If you know CSS or JavaScript, you can do more, but you don't need to create a unique site. And all you have to do is go to the examples page at squarespace.com and you'll get an idea of how every Squarespace site is unique. Squarespace.com. You never have to worry about updating the software. It's always automatically updated. You never have to worry about bandwidth. You'll never run out. Squarespace starts at $12 a month. And you want more bandwidth, you want more storage, you want more features, you can add to the price. But the key on this is to use the offer code MacBreak because you'll get 10% off your site for life. It supports Form Builder, Flickr. You can import from your existing blog with a click of the mouse. Export too, so you're never trapped. Squarespace.com. Use the promo code MacBreak to save 10% for the life of your site forever and ever. And it's very easy and free to create a test site if you just want to get an idea of what Squarespace can do. All you have to do is give the site name, whatever you decide, a password, an email address in case you forget the password, enter the CAPTCHA, and you've got a site for 14 days that you can play with, and all the features are enabled and ready to go. Squarespace.com/MacBreak. Give it a try today. Leo Laporte with Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, talking about the Back to the Mac event. What are you doing there? What's going on? Hey, you're Facebooking each other right there. That's cool. Andy, I don't hear you, though. Maybe I should have Facebooked you. FaceTimed you.
There you go.
Did I say Facebook?
Yeah.
FaceTimed you.
There you go. Yeah, see, we're doing our own competing show live while we're doing this show with you. We're trying to steal advertisers.
The back channel.
Yes.
I love it.
But yeah, Alex is going in from his iPhone. And so if he rotates...
Alex will demonstrate this. That's kind of cool. They showed this on stage, too, with Schiller and Steve.
Right.
That's neat.
I'm sorry. I wish I had like another hand free so I could be turning off lights to get rid of that glare.
What happens if you go full screen with that image? Can you go full screen with a phone image?
I believe you get window box. Hang on, let me go full screen. And it just turns into sort of a window box display.
Yeah.
Like that.
Okay.
And that's it. See, I don't know if you can like see like that. Oops.
So now you can FaceTime Mac to Mac, Mac to phone, Mac to iPod, and vice versa. Anything with FaceTime on it. You do need Snow Leopard for this. It's free and it's available now. And when Alex and I went to the FaceTime link, if you go to, by the way, apple.com/Mac/FaceTime, the link that we were getting was not to FaceTime but to iWork, an iWork trial. They may have fixed that by now. I hope they have. A little error there.
Or maybe just Apple still bears a grudge, Leo.
Yeah, they know my IP address.
Their heart has been broken by you before.
They know where to find me.
It was all over Twitter that they're like, hey, why am I getting iWork?
So wait a minute, the button's gone now. Oh, there
Yeah.
it is. Okay. And it is FaceTime.dmg. That's good news. So it is FaceTime now. They fixed the download. I think we're done. I think we can talk about. I think that's FaceTime. That's iLife. Anything else we want to say about those before we move to Liger?
No iWork. Hopefully, we'll see that sometime.
Oh, iWork. Yeah. What happened?
Nothing to do yet.
Nothing to do yet. You know, actually, this does tie in with the Lion because he showed a download of Pages in the App Store, and it's my suspicion that from now on, you're not going to buy packages or download directly. You're going to have to buy it in the App Store, aren't you?
I bet you all the Apple apps will be that way.
Exactly. So let's talk about Lion. What did Steve say? Lion OS 10. Did he say it's OS 11 or OS 10.8? I guess it's 10.8. 10.7.
I believe he's stuck with OS 10. I don't believe if he mentioned an actual number, I didn't mention it, but he was talking about OS 10 all throughout.
Okay. The first thing he said was it is back to the Mac, in the sense that started with the Mac. We rewrote Mac OS to run on the iPhone. That's iOS.
Right.
Then to the iPad, and he showed almost like a recycling.
Right, exactly. That's that new terminology. We started with Mac OS 10 and created a new version called iOS, which we used for the iPhone. We added new things and perfected it, and now it's on the iPhone. What we'd like to do is we're inspired by these innovations, and now we'd like to bring them back to the Mac.
Back to the Mac. So what does that mean? What are we seeing? What of iOS are we seeing on the Mac?
Mostly it's a couple things. As a matter of fact, the most interesting thing is one of the most interesting things is actually how he started off for the first 5 minutes to explain why multi-touch was coming to the Mac OS in the way that it was coming. He
called it not multi-touch, but multi-touch gestures.
Right, because he made a big point about how he doesn't believe that it works at all to have multi-touch on a vertical surface. It was almost like the AntennaGate demo, where he was showing, here's why we're not idiots. It has occurred to us you could do a multi-touch display on a notebook, but here's why we've rejected that idea.
Basically, because your arm gets heavy. He says on a vertical surface you're doing this, and it's not ergonomic.
Yeah, exactly. Touch surfaces don't want to be vertical. It gives great demo, but after an extended period of time, your arm wants to fall off. Touch surfaces want to be horizontal, hence iPads. So he went on to talk about how the way that Apple has decided to do multi-touch on the desktop is to simply have really good desktop multi-touch controllers, like the multi-touch trackpad, like the Magic Trackpad, and like the new Magic Mouse with multi-touch built in. So there really was during this demo. It looks like there's a brand new verb that they're using called flick. That the Apple engineers and managers who were talking about this, they didn't announce it as terminology, but you can tell that they've been using this word flick internally like for months and months. You simply flick over to this side, and now here's your preview. Then you flick back, and now here once again is your dashboard view. So I think that's something that we're going to be hearing a lot more about.
This isn't really anything new, though, because if you have a Magic Trackpad or a Magic Mouse, you can do gestures in OS 10 right now.
Yep. Yeah, but they're a little bit more relevant now that they have this new Launchpad area where it's expected that you're gonna. Two different twists. One is that it seems as though full screen mode is going to be one of the core features of modern apps on iOS, to the extent that there's even going to be, the implication is that there's going to be actual API like Xcode support for full screen modes. That apps just like a built-in feature of an expected built-in feature of Mac apps is that they have windows and they have menus and they have icons. Now it seems as though part of the standard Mac OS bag of tricks is that if it's appropriate, each one of these apps is going to have a full screen mode, which works not only just for the idea of having a nice unitasky sort of full screen, no distraction interface, but also because it works really great in this Launchpad area, where if you go from like this environment that has all your windows in it and all your application icons on it, and you flick to the left to go back to Pages, for instance, if you left Pages in a certain mode, you won't see windows and menus and things. You will see just a screen filling document of what you were working on, and that's where you landed at the minute you flick to the left from your Finder view. So it looks like it's going to be a very subtle point that's going to reach into so many different places of the Mac experience.
What's pretty clear is that Apple has decided to completely rethink UI. So this full screen, the menu bar's gone. It really is the iPad interface or the menu bar.
Well, keep in mind that we're not talking about removing it from iOS. We're talking about how applications, when appropriate, when it's appropriate for them to have a full screen interface, there is sort of a blessed version of having an iOS one window interface where you don't necessarily have menus, where it is really down to one task at a time, as opposed to the full palette of what you can do with a word processor or with a graphics editor or a photo organizer.
And I mean, by the way, I should point out, I'm doing it right now with Chrome. I mean, that's full screen Chrome. There's no menu bar. It's just the web.
And as I myself said a couple of weeks ago when I was talking about how I started to use my iPad more as a general writing device, only because it is such a great no distractions tool to have one window that just focuses you on what you're doing. That really could be a very saleable feature. Even the Mac apps are starting to have problems where less clever programmers, when they need to add a new feature, their solution is, well, we'll just add a new tool palette, or we'll add a new menu bar, or even worse, we'll add a new form of stacked menu bar, so we'll have more places to put more controls. This seems to be a more emphatic gesture from Apple to say, try to think about ways of delivering the power of your apps in a way where you have minimal interface and just focus on the task at hand. Very interesting.
Yeah, I think that the number one is I definitely think this is a progression. I think what we're seeing here is we are, and we've talked about this for the last 6 months, is that we are on a path to OS, iOS being the next OS. I mean, I think this is, and if we were looking for any indicators, I think that's 100%. This is the direction we're going. I think that I do think when we look at the full screen and that process, I still want to touch my screen. I know that they say that they don't, you don't want to.
I constantly reach over and touch my screen.
Yeah, I'm constantly like, oh, I can't do that. It feels old. Now, I will say that I was surprised that they didn't say the Apple TV would support, the FaceTime in some way, shape, or form as we started to look at this, because I know that, now I'm very happy that I still have a Mac Mini, because I could put a little webcam over
Wouldn't
top of
that
my
be
TV.
interesting?
But that's something that I almost dare not to speculate about. Think of another, if Apple's idea is that many apps should have a full screen minimal interface mode, doesn't it make that really easy to port those things onto iOS and port those things so that they're relevant to the Apple TV as well as to the desktop? I'm not sure if I agree with the idea that iOS is going to be the main operating system, because it just wasn't built for that and it's just not appropriate. I do think that the idea of having if you imagine a Venn diagram where you have circle 1 being macOS and circle 2 being iOS, Lion will sort of make sure that these two have an interlapping zone in between, so that if you spend a lot of your time on your iPhone or a lot of your time on the iPad, you're going to find a lot of experiences on your Mac that will be very, very consistent with what you were doing when you were just on your commuter rail, just editing a document on your way back home.
They're also adding something called Mission Control, which combines elements of Spaces, Expose, Dashboard, and the App Store, I guess, into one. What is the fourth element of Mission Control?
Spaces, Expose, the dock.
Dashboard, and the dock.
Okay. Dashboard and the dock. Okay. Yeah, it seems to be like a 3-tiered display where the top strip is going to be the bottom strip is just the dock. The middle strip is going to be like Expose, in which you have sort of minimized versions of your Windows and your active apps. At the top strip are going to be the full screen versions, the full screen experiences that you have open at a certain given moment. So for instance, if you are reading a book or reading a manual in preview and you have it in full screen mode, then you just simply have an open book among those top strips of minimized views, and so you click on that and you immediately go all the way back. The integration with Spaces is just the switching mechanism. The idea that you have sort of a slideshow stack of screens.
That's the flick,
right? Exactly.
Minority
that flicks you from one place to another, right? Yeah. So instead of worrying about how will this window come in and superimpose itself, well, no, the camera is just moving to this entirely different view that just has features on that. They did add one cool new trick to Expose, however, where instead of having just separated individual windows that of every single open window and having the option of using a different key command to just see the windows that are associated with one app, now the windows associated with a certain app are now in a stack where they're staggered slightly so you can see what's underneath them, and they're still live views, but all of your Safari windows are still going to be in one pile instead of sort of scattered somewhere in the grid. Very pretty.
It really does feel like a rethinking of the OS. And of course, it's an interim step where you have both But do you think we're going to move away from the Finder-based OS, or is that always going to be with us?
I think they're starting to minimize the reason for having the Finder in the first place.
Right.
It seems as though now you could spend all of your time in mission control and only go into the Finder when you need to do basic file maintenance. So I don't think that they're going to be deleting the Finder from Lion. However, I think that the goal is to make sure that it's no longer the concierge to your entire Mac experience. Right. They're hoping that when you turn on your Mac or wake it from sleep, they will want you to want to wake it into mission control instead of waking it into the Finder.
Well, and I think that you're going to end up with a situation where Apple is sneaking up on us as the user, which is that they're going to get to a point where we don't really use the Finder and we don't really buy applications in anywhere other than the App Store, and we don't really do any of that stuff, and it's only 10% of us that still are doing that, and then it'll just suddenly drop off on some OS update. I mean, I think I don't think they're going to.
That's my big question mark is, does Apple say, well, we'll leave it in for the 10% of you that use Terminal and Finder, or do we get rid of it? In 3 years, will we have no Terminal commands, no Finder, no file system?
Well, no. I'm thinking back to a comment that an Apple engineer said to me before 10.0 was officially released, and they announced that the underlying structure of the Mac OS 10 was going to be Unix. They said it was a really good comment. He said to me that if you go looking for Unix in Mac OS 10 and you do not find it, we feel as though we will have failed. If you don't go looking for it and you find it, we also will feel as though we have failed. Right. And that's exactly what they accomplished. I think that that's the sort of thing we're going to be seeing here, where if you go looking for a specific experience and you do not find it, they'll think that they've kind of screwed up. However, if you want to use the application launcher, the application environment, the switcher that you like, and you find yourself forced to use an application that's been part of Mac OS since 1984, even though you don't really want it, don't really need it, I think that they will feel as though they really didn't prosecute these iOS ideas the way that they feel as though they could have.
Well, and the thing that scares me, I think, is that I think that the way Apple's going to look at this is for 90% of the consumers, well, let's say 80% of the consumers out there, the iOS on their Mac would be plenty. For 80 to 90% of the developers, the iOS, the App Store would be great, especially if you're a little developer trying to build up your own e-commerce and manage it and support it and do all those other things. And just being in a big marketplace like that and being easy to buy. I think what they're also going to look at is that if 80% of the market ends up buying stuff from the App Store, you have no choice but to put it on the App Store because no one's going to know you exist. And so I think that the thing is that I think Apple's going to continue to play down that road, and the result is going to be, at some point in time, it just doesn't make sense for the consumer or the developer to be anywhere other than in this little closed environment. And for a developer, piracy becomes less of an issue. People casually copying it to their friends becomes less of an issue. But also for the user, losing your app, forgetting your serial numbers, forgetting your, trying to figure out how, losing your computer, not being able to reinstall all your applications. These are all things that go away the way that went away for our iPhone. I killed an iPhone, and what did I do? I just plugged it in and restored it. Back to exactly where it was the moment the last time I backed it up. And I think that is something that's a drug that a lot of people are really going to enjoy.
Yeah, it was certainly an incomplete demo. I was expecting more of a power walkthrough of what Lion was going to be, as opposed to just a philosophical brief on where they're going with it. I did think, though, it was interesting that they didn't mention how the new App Store for desktop apps is going to integrate with Software Update. It'd be great if Software Update will simply be this new App Store interface, where it'll be the way that they deliver security updates, the way that they deliver iWork updates and iLife updates. But if that's going to be the one place I go every time I want to see what's been updated since the last time that I checked.
The App Store is the biggest change.
A lot of.
Let's hold that thought. We're going to talk about the App Store. I want to take a little break. We do have to kind of move this along because Twig is coming up in about 9 minutes. So we're going to cover the App Store. We'll skip the picks this week, and we'll finish up with final words on the MacBook Air. So we have a few more minutes, but we don't have a whole lot of time. So let me mention Gazelle. This is actually a good time to mention Gazelle because if you are sitting on any existing Apple hardware that you might want to get rid of,
You're a loser who just bought an Air a month ago, loser.
Yeah, I don't know what kind that might be, but if you go to Gazelle, you don't have to sell it. You get money for it by gazelling it. Gazelle. Get cash for your gadgets. Of course, a lot of people use this to upgrade to the iPhone 4. Let me just see if the MacBook Air is worth anything right now on the Gazelle page. Which version I have? I think this one. Let me just see if I can. Does it power on? Yes, it's in good condition. So here's what you do: you fill out the form. You say what you've got, what condition it's in. They say, we'll pay you $418 for that MacBook Air. Yes, thank you. You can see the price plummeting. In fact, I would go for it now because it's only going to go down.
Sell, Mortimer, sell.
This is the beauty of Gazelle. What you do is you get a box from Gazelle. They send you a box with a mailing label, and you can just pile in all your stuff. You get your price ahead of time. You send it off to Gazelle. They send you a check, as long as it matches what you said the condition was and so forth. They do wipe all your data. You don't have to think about that. Their experts are really good and careful about that. Gazelle is the way to afford new gadgets. Don't sell it. Gazelle it. And if what you've got is utter crap, it's so old they can't sell it, they'll recycle it for you. And they'll recycle it green recycling. They don't guarantee nothing goes in the landfill. It's EPA certified. They recycle all of the parts, all of the heavy metals. They don't poison the environment. It's a great way to recycle your stuff, too. Proper recycling through Excel. Well, let's look at so it's interesting. They even mentioned the MacBook Air. By using Gazelle, consumers are responsibly disposing of old electronics and replacing them with the newer, more environmentally friendly items like the gorgeous MacBook Air. That's interesting. That's right in there. Hey, by the way, Gazelle, if you have a charity, Gazelle has a page for a cause. You can turn your gadgets into cash for your cause by setting up a Gazelle page for your charity, your school, your team, and they will take all the money you raise and send it right to you. So your parents or friends, whatever, send their gadgets to Gazelle. The money goes to you, and Gazelle does a great job of this, too. I want you to check it out. Don't just sell it, Gazelle it. If you use Gazelle, by the way, use the offer code MacBreak. Actually, it's MacBreak 2, all right? MacBreak and the number 2. And you will get an additional bonus of 5% on the value of your items. So enter in all your items, put them in the box, send them out, and then use MacBreak 2 to add a bonus 5% payment for your used gadgets. Gazelle, Gazelle. Don't sell it, Gazelle it. Andy Ihnatko, Alex Lindsay, MacBreak Weekly. We're covering the announcements from Apple. The App Store is based on the Apple Store. I got to point out right away, first thing, that I don't think you're going to see apps written for the iPad and iPhone on the Mac because they're different processors.
I think they could be emulated. The Mac has a lot of processing power. It
I guess
easily
so. Yeah, they didn't imply that, of course.
But would Apple really want to have a substandard iOS run, a substandard experience for iOS apps on the desktop when they could just simply say, come on, for God's sakes, it's only $500, buy an iPad.
Right. So don't be fooled by the word iOS in this case. This App Store is for Macintosh apps.
The whole rap was that the theme was that we took a look at everything that makes everything that we like from iOS that we could easily put into macOS. One of them was just simply the way that it's great to have one centralized location where people can buy apps, one centralized location for getting updates, and the ability to get a one-click install on just about everything and make that into a consistent user experience. Yeah. So there are about 8 different things that they mentioned that they're taking from iOS, but that was it's not a merging of these two operating systems. It was just a stealing of a great idea. Only this time they're stealing from themselves. So it's even better. Okay.
Now, I have to say, my heart pounded a little bit when I saw this. I can see, and I'll let you, Alex, make this point, that developers might like this, but it looks to me like Apple's looking at their iPhone, iPad ecosystem and saying, boy, this is great. It's closed. We get 30% of everything that's sold. We can approve everything that's on there. It's really easy for consumers. Developers are going to like it. We can make more money. And all we have to do is get all these independent guys out of the picture. Are we going to see a day where we have to jailbreak a Macintosh to put our own software on it?
I actually wouldn't be that surprised if we get to a point where you have to jailbreak your Mac to do that. But I think that, again, for 96 to 99% of the developers, that wouldn't really matter, and they would find their stuff on the Mac. So, I don't think that, again, I think that Apple is a 90-90 company. What will 90% of people do 90% of the time? And I think that that's been a very successful model for them. And I think that I can say as a developer, either you're going to put a lot of work into your own e-commerce system, or you're going to be ready, especially if they're going to deal with downloads, updates, e-commerce, all of that ease of use, all of the commenting systems, everything else. That's going to be, it's going to run you 22 to 25% from Digital River or other people who will do a comparable service, and you will not be part of this ecosystem that has been very successful, where people can casually find your stuff. So I think that for many, many developers, this is a big deal, and I think that probably for more than half of them, it's a big deal, especially small developers who don't have the resources of Adobe or Autodesk or something like that, that can't promote their stuff on their own, that can't build a great website, that can't build all the other pieces that they want. They don't have to. I think that's why a lot of them like developing for the iPhone and the iPad, is that they can just put an app up, and and the thing is that it's not working for everybody. But again, I think that for well over 90% it will, and I think that the trajectory of that, whether we like it or not, and I'm not saying that I necessarily like it across the board, but whether we like it or not, I can definitely see a trajectory 5 years down the road where this is the only game in town, because and Apple doesn't need to do anything about it. They don't even need to end the other option. It's that, if you're not developing inside of the App Store, you only have access to 5 or 10% of the market that's still using manual downloads because they hate them. The advantage for the developer is that this is a closed system. They're not going to have as much piracy. They're going to have people paying for every app that they have. It may mean that they can drop the price. A lot of the price that you pay for applications is taking into account the fact that 10 people are using your application for every one that buys it. So the thing is that there can be a temptation to drop that price. For the user, because I'm already authenticated, it means I don't have to find all those stupid serial numbers and all those codes and I don't have to tie that all in. That's all tied in at the OS. Obviously, there's a lot of disadvantages to it, a loss of freedom, a loss of, all kinds of other pieces.
Well, and you've heard Steve Jobs' response when people say, "Oh, we're losing choice." He says, "You got choice. You got Linux.
Yep.
You got Windows. You don't need us."
And I think that's going to. I do think that we are looking 5 years down the road of something that is a closed system. I think this is something that prints money for Apple, but I also think it does it because it makes it easier for 90% of the consumers and 90% of the developers.
You agree, Andy?
I think they're doing it because it's a way to differentiate themselves on an ongoing basis from Windows and all the other operating systems. They've already stated that they're making a little bit of money from the App Store, but not as much as you would think. So I really think this is just a way to add a feature that will resonate with consumers. I wouldn't go so far as to say that they love their consumers. They will do everything they can to include. It's more like we need to always continue to do what we can to make our operating system better than anything else out there, and to remove that one bit of hassle of how do you get applications and how do you install them and how do you upgrade them. What happens when you have a system crash and you lose all of them? This seems like a very neat, tidy way to cut through all that. Although I think the celebrity impression you should have done there, Leo, was not Columbo. It should have been Jimmy Stewart. It's One for Life. Like, you're just looking at the one thing you still can't get your claws on, Apple. But yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of really hysterical and some on point talking about this. You see, I was warning you about this. Tinfoil hats on. Apple wants all of the market share, wants to control everything that you're doing.
Well, it remains to be seen, but I could absolutely see Apple doing that.
Well, but the thing is how many people, we're not a good example because we, have all this custom stuff and we're geeks and we, do all this stuff. But how many of our cousins and parents and friends just want to turn the computer on and have it work, and when they buy something, they just want it to be on, and if something goes wrong, they just want to be able to reinstall it. And
it's the iPad experience. And people,
if you have a religious or a political problem with the idea of Apple having an app store, so long as there's still the ability to never use the app store if you never want to use it, then any complaint about the app store becomes null and void. If it becomes a problem where you have to be tapped into the app store ecosystem as a developer to have any success writing Apple and selling Apple products, then it becomes a problem for Apple. I don't think they're going to let that happen.
But I think Apple doesn't need to do anything. I think the thing is if
exactly, I agree with your point.
As an iOS app, if a developer, if I've given up 80% of my market by not developing for it, I'm screwed.
Yeah, the big question that I have my briefing with Apple in a couple hours, and the number one question is going to be: is this thing going to be curated in any way, or is it going to be like the Wild Wild West?
Of course, it's going to be curated.
Yeah,
how could you even ask?
Well, that's not necessarily a given, because the fact that they're certainly not locking the OS to make sure that the App Store is the only source of apps for that software means, well, not yet. That's one hell of a bit of speculation. I think that the idea that they're going to be, it means that they're doing away with the idea of, here's the reason why we have to curate the iPhone App Store, because when you have a handset that connects to a network that everybody has to share, we have to make sure that these things behave properly. We want to make sure that everything's stable.
This is going to prove that is utter BS, that the real reason Apple does it is because they want end-to-end control of the ecosystem. And I suspect they're going to assert that here.
Okay. This is different from this. That's
I
the point
agree.
I want to make here.
No, I'm with you. And this will be the test of it. And if they create an app store that is not curated, this will be the test. Then I'll say, wow, Apple, that's impressive. I don't know why they would do that.
Because remember, on the iPhone, you do not have the opportunity. You don't have the alternative of buying things that are not sold through the App Store unless you jailbreak your phone, which is something they don't necessarily.
By the way, I think it is curated, because didn't Steve say the store opens in 90 days? You can start submitting your apps now.
Well, it doesn't mean you can just simply send an email with a link to where people can download stuff. I mean, there's going to have to be a process where you have your screenshots ready, you have your descriptions ready, you tell how much you want it to be priced at, what day and date you want it to drop at. That you really can't infer anything from there.
Yeah. Again, well, I'm glad you're going to ask the question. I mean, we don't know, obviously, so I'd love to hear Apple's answer.
But I think that Apple is definitely looking at the large school market, the concerned parent market, the idea that if Apple curates it, this is the end of. I mean, their kids have a closed. You could possibly. What if they get to a point where they don't get rid of the OS? You can always go back to it, but you have the ability as an administrator to lock it to the iOS solution, which means you now are in this curated environment where, if you're a school giving it to the kids, or your parents are giving it to your kids, you could theoretically close that off if you chose to.
Yeah. It's curated for well, we'll see. Of course it's curated. It's obviously curated. I mean, this is Apple asserting, from the point of view of the public, this is good for you. Updates are automatic, security is assured, you get a better price, you get a very transparent process, one-click access. This is what you've always wanted in applications. From Apple's point of view, we control the ecosystem. And by the way, that's good for Apple too, because it makes the Apple experience superior. And from Apple's point of view, we control the ecosystem. You can't tell me they don't make money. If they sell 8 billion apps and they make 30%, where's the money going? They're making money.
This is something they said to stockholders, and if they exaggerated,
no, you're right.
That's a big problem. They'll lie to me, but they won't lie to stockholders.
No, you're absolutely right. I suspect this is what Steve Jobs has always wanted, is a walled garden. And he'll say you have choice, but it's just if you want Apple, this is your choice.
And a lot of people are going to still choose it. I mean, that's the reality.
And more people will choose it. Mm-hmm. I think you're absolutely right. Schools, people who don't care about open systems, companies.
If I'm a company, I'm going to want to have the ability to only provide that closed environment to all my employees, and that's going to be a choice that I will make to make sure that that's all tied up.
I just thought of what evil Apple would do, like the comic book version of evil Apple, where once they get the Mac OS App Store off the ground, in 8 months they they hire somebody to release the first Mac Trojan horse or virus, and they say, well, you know what, that wasn't available through the App Store. We test all of our stuff.
They don't need to.
You're still free to do that.
They don't need to.
I'm talking about the comic book evil Apple.
But I'll tell you, the comic book evil Apple was Steve Jobs talking on Monday, completely misinterpreting what open means, saying, Android's not open, it's fragmented, and this is I believe this is his worldview, and I don't believe he believes in open source or open software or the ability to install programs of your choice. But we'll see. I mean, that's just my belief about him.
Open is so open to interpretation. I was moderating a panel at Comic-Con, and I was talking about the iPad as a really nice hybrid between open source components and proprietary components, and that totally derailed the entire panel for 10 minutes of, it's not really open because it's not BSD and it's not Free Software Foundation. It's not, what I mean by open is that...
You ain't seen nothing yet. I mean, yes, it's open now. It's based on an open platform, but I have a feeling we're going to see it become more and more closed. And it's not an unreasonable response to the security issues you're seeing on other side on the Windows side. On the other hand, I think that is the same kind of red herring that child pornography is for people who want to censor the internet. It's a very convenient whipping boy, but it's not really the reason why Apple wants it closed, I don't think. I think Apple wants to completely control the user experience. They got a taste of it on the iPhone, they got a taste of it on the iPad, and now they're going, nah, well, let's do it on the desktop.
Hairless cats for everybody. Yes, 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 yes.
Yes. Anyway, we'll see. I mean, and I pray that I'm wrong, and I hope that users who care will assert themselves and tell Apple that's not what they want. But Steve,
it'll either work for users or it will not work for users. If it works for users, then politics and religion should not be part of this discussion.
Yeah, you might be right. We'll see. I think it's more. See, here's my deal. I think it is more than politics and religion. I think it's a fundamental part of the for us in the long run. The success of the ecosystem is that it stay open. And it's fundamentally, for a business point of view, for Apple, it's absolutely good for Apple that it not. And
open is not a user feature. It can contribute to user features, but open is not a user feature.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll see.
And I think that the thing is that it's I think it, for the most part, on an average day, it would be good for the consumer, the developer, everything else. The problem is, on a good day, we always say when people ask why do I spend all this money on cameras, these big cameras with all this stuff on it. I was like, well, a little camera can shoot just a perfect little image when the environment is perfect. When the environment is a good situation, it's broadcast. But I want the big camera because when things go wrong, I want to be able to dial all that stuff in. And that's what you give up when you start giving up all this freedom, is you can't dial stuff in. You can't. You can't fix it. You can't customize it the way you want to. I'm already frustrated with where the Mac is now and its ability to customize it. I want OS 10 on Alienware software. Alienware hardware, right, because I don't have enough slots. I don't have enough stuff to customize. And I can. What scares me is it is going the other direction.
I think this is now that we can see it more clearly. This is where they always wanted to go. Where Steve always wanted to go. But we'll see. And I should point out that this is where Microsoft would love to go too. They've floated the idea of a Windows App Store. In fact,
and the thing is this whole process scares me. But I got to say, as a developer, I'm going to be submitting our software to that platform
because you like crack.
I like business. I like commerce.
Crack is great. It gets you really high.
Just watch out.
There's some downsides, but let's not deny that there are positive features that make it very marketable.
Because once you give up choice, it's very hard to get back.
We have listened. Users like an opiate that lets them disconnect from reality and gives them an otherworldly experience, and so it's available now.
That's kind of how I feel about it, but we'll see. We'll see.
But I mean, just to say one last thing though, as a developer, if I want to deal with an encryption technology or a security technology that's going to allow my stuff, you're talking about. If I don't buy one off the shelf and pay $60,000 to $100,000 for an off-the-shelf security software, I'm going to develop one at the cost of $250,000 to $500,000, and then people are going to crack it anyway. And so the thing is that the idea that it's all tied down is, and we don't spend that much on it. The thing is that, but I think that is I think that's what I can see from a developer's perspective. They would be very interested in, is the idea that Apple's going to manage all them from the OS.
Sure.
And that's going to pull a lot of people in.
Welcome to the suburbs, where everything is clean and your hedges are clipped.
Another Pleasant Valley Sunday.
It's the gated community, and I think you're right. I think that's what people want. It's not what's good for us, but I think it is what people want. But on that note, we're going to have to wrap this up. We will not do picks this week because this is a special edition of MacBreak Weekly, and we've run out of time. Andy Ihnatko is at the Chicago Sun-Times. You can follow him there or on his website, www.cwob.com. On Twitter, he's IHNATKO. Alex Lindsay is of the Pixel Corps, pixelcorps.com, if you want to know more about that great guild of multimedia artists who are training and working together. Pixelcorps.tv for their great podcasts. Anything you guys want to plug? All right.
This next week, I think that if you go up to eBay, I think I posted on my Twitter that there's still a charity, like you can come to the iOS thing we're doing with Big Nerd Ranch next week. So I'm going to be in class.
Oh, that's next week. How exciting! I'm so jealous.
Next week, yeah. So I'm going to be in class learning iOS development with the guys from Big Nerd Ranch, and they are going to be. I think if you go up to eBay, you can actually, or go to my Twitter, Alex Lindsay, you can see the link to the to one where you can come to the class, and they're donating all of it to a nonprofit in Atlanta. So definitely check that out.
And speaking of which, I'm going to be keynoting at the first Mac Tech Developers Conference in a couple of weeks in sunny Los Angeles, California.
Awesome.
Go to MacTech.com. Some seats are still available.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Reminder, we have put the coverage of the keynote up on our specials page, twit.tv/specials. It's Twit special number 42. You can watch as Tom Merritt and Alex and I dissect what's going on as Steve and the others are laying it out. Don't forget, Becky Worley will be back. She's on her way back from Apple, and TNT is coming up this afternoon at 2:30 Pacific, 5:30 Eastern. Becky will give you her firsthand opinions of the MacBook Air. And we will release Becky's brief interview with Steve Jobs, the only interview we're ever going to get with Steve Jobs.
Brief but exclusive.
It's up on YouTube right now. If you go to YouTube. Yeah, it was a very good get. YouTube.com/twit. YouTube.com/twit for that and this show as well after we get it together. Thank you guys for being here. Thank you all for watching. I'm Leo Laporte. We'll see you next time. Now get back to work. Break time's over.